Welcome into That Atleti Podcast, back in your ears and on your screens for another week. It's a special one today, Ricky. We're talking about the season ahead, La Liga, and we're recording this Friday afternoon/evening here in the U.S. And the start of La Liga has already started, but Atletico kickoff on Sunday night in Madrid.
Yeah.
How are we feeling?
I mean, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch highlights of the matches today, but very strong start by Villarreal and Rayo. Both are going to be interesting teams to follow because Villarreal are going to be the side to leave on the curve as soon as possible. They seem like the team that wants to step up and be in contention with Atlético Madrid for that position as an aspiring side to beat Real Madrid and Barcelona. I think that both Villarreal and Rayo benefited from red cards on the other side, which kind of made the score seem a little bit more dramatic than maybe the difference between the two teams was. But very strong start by surprising Conference League side Rayo Vallecano and
Rayo.
And very
wild,
very interesting side Villarreal, very dangerous side Villarreal because they've had a good market. I think their end of market is coming across as stronger than Atletico's, and I think that's there's a dangerous take there because I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the story that was published a few hours before this show we're recording right now of Chelsea turning down an offer for a loan operation with Renato Vega. The Villarreal is normally willing to take risks on players that have a lot of upside, and they already made a move for Santiago Mourinho. I think it would be really, really bad for the reputation of Atlético Madrid to see those two players go to a rival such as Villarreal, especially when Atletico seems to have contributed to Villarreal reinforcing their defensive line with the arrival of Santiago Mourinho. I think that behind the scenes, there must have been some kind of previous agreement in terms of the Baena operation, and they could have been connected. But anyway, signing Thomas with all the controversy that surrounds the operation and seeing how they normally manage to squeeze a lot from players that arrive to that atmosphere where the pressure is lower than in Metropolitano. It's going to be an interesting championship. I mean, it's going to be an interesting league from the very beginning. There's so many question marks to answer throughout the season about Atlético Madrid and about the sides that Atlético Madrid is going to be competing against.
The whole point of this window, the whole point of this rejuvenation, as we've been calling it, is you want to distance yourself from those sides. It is more important, arguably as important, to distance yourself from the Villarreals, the Betis's, the athletic clubs, than it is to build a squad, because financially it's just not really possible. Build a squad that can go 38 rounds toe to toe with Madrid and Barcelona. That is the goal for Atlético de Madrid every summer, is to distance yourself further from the chasing pack. And I don't know, I still feel pretty good about the window. In a little bit here, I'm going to talk to Joseph Fischetti of the Forza Napoli pod. He's going to tell us all about Jack Raspadori, the latest incoming. There may be one or two more, maybe probably just one if there is one more. But overall, I'm feeling pretty good about where Atleti are. I wanted to do some bold predictions on this show about the season ahead, starting on Sunday at Espanyol, at Cornellà, where Atleti just have rotten form. But before we do bold predictions, I want to say that Atleti being better this season is not probable to convey in the tangible form of titles. That's rarely the case here, as we know. Atleti are never favorites. We're never favorites for anything. That's kind of how we like it. What I want the team to show me this year, Ricky, is progress. I want us to enter the last 5 weeks of the season in the race still. I want us to reach a cup final. That, to me, represents progress. I'm not going to sit here. We had a whole debate about this a couple of weeks ago, man. I'm not going to sit here and demand and oblige the team to win titles. The work that Atletico have done this summer and even last summer, this is work that should have been done 3, 4, 5 years ago. You're trying to undo all these market mistakes in a span of 2 years, and very few clubs have that capability. Atleti are typically not among those clubs, so it's going to be fascinating to see how all these new pieces fit in, and I'm excited.
Let me ask you this question: do you think that Atletico should have this sense of urgency, or should play the long game? What is your take on that? Because they do seem to be contradicting approaches. I mean, if you do have this urgency and this win now approach, it feels like it's at odds with the build for the future, build for the next 5 seasons kind of point of view. I tend to side with the second half, but I'm surprised to see many fans with this sense of now or never, which I really don't know where all of this comes from. And listening to you now, I do feel that there is a little sense of urgency of there has to be a final in the at the end of the season, or being very close to a final, competing for titles. What's your take on that?
I think it's a reasonable goal given 2 Copa del Rey semifinal exits in the past 2 seasons. I think it's a reasonable goal to want to make the Copa del Rey final, make the Supercopa de España final in January, because Atleti are taking part in 4 competitions this season. But Atleti kind of exists in this contradictory space where you have to build a sustainable project around younger players. You have to let Cholo Simeone coach younger players. You have to let him develop players. He's one of the best developmental coaches in the world. You can't keep giving him 30, 31, 32, 33-year-old players to work with. As you've said, you can't sign players whose 10 best games have already happened. On the other hand, Atleti have been so close on so many occasions before. Through, and not even, they have broken through. They've broken the duopoly in several seasons of Cholo's reign and won 2 league titles, incredibly, in a league that is conditioned to favor Real Madrid and Barcelona. It's pretty incredible, and it has created some outsized expectations as to what Atletico should achieve. So it's very weird, but I lean more toward you've signed all these players all in this 22 to 27 age bracket, and you've given them all 5-year contracts. That to me says project. Sustainable project. Let these players build the system. Let these players become the system. Let Alex Baena continue to grow. Let Julián Alvarez continue to grow. I've seen it said that if Atletico don't build a winning project, Julián will leave. Julián has a contract till 2030. They just brought Thiago Almada, one of his best friends from the national team. I think he's going to stay. I think Julián is aware that of the long-term thinking here. And Atletico are not a club that thinks long-term, which is one of the more exciting parts of the summer to me. To the point of we're going to have these players for the next 3, 4, 5 years. None of these players are stopgaps. That says build a project, develop a project to, in the next year, 2 years, compete even better for titles. Not necessarily win, because that's hard to do in La Liga, but compete even better.
None of those players, maybe if you leave Baena out and the promise of Carlos in the future, are top-tier players.
That's true.
We reasonably say that there has been an incremental improvement of the team, but it remains to be seen. And that's one of the biggest question marks of the season as it opens. I mean, Atletico has had some significant amount of subpar players delivering rather decent performances for a sustained length of time. Now that you have players that exceed the previous level, will you get better results? Will this yield the expected improvement? And I think that would mean maybe being as optimistic as that best case scenario that you were talking about at the beginning. It does feel difficult. It does feel like a tall order for a team that's going to flip half of its starting 11.
Yeah, it's winning the title this year. I'm not thinking that way. I look at Barcelona's squad. I look at Real Madrid's squad.
in the whole operation of feeling this sense of urgency and at the same time feeling that you have to let it simmer.
Yeah, Atletico have got to be the only club in the world that exists in that contradictory space. I understand it, but it's just such a weird space to be in year after year.
It is.
It's just because of the previous success, because winning La Liga in 2014 and 2021, because of reaching 2 Champions League finals, reaching and winning 3 Europa League finals since 2010, like winning the Super Cup over Real Madrid in Estonia. Like these are winning the Copa del Rey at the Bernabeu. Like these are all things that make people think, okay, Atletico should be at the top of the table every year. Like Atletico should be competing more than they do. And it's weird because there is some sense of urgency. The urgency that I feel, though, is I want to see these players develop. I want to see Johnny Cardoso become an important player and take this next big step. I want to see if Mark Pubil can become a dominant center back. I think he has the tools. I want to see Matteo Ruggetti stand out in a new league and really grow as more than just a promising left back, left wing back. I want him to take that next step. Atleti don't often recruit players who have that next step in them. That next step has already been taken when you sign players like Axel Witsel and Cesar Azpilicueta. But to your point, Ricky, with the exception of Ballon, none of these players that Atleti have recruited can be described as elite yet. Operative word yet. You have to let Cholo Simeone coach them. You have to let them develop and get experience in a bigger club and bigger games. And we'll see if it works. Even if a few of the signings don't necessarily pan out, I like the bets that Atleti have made this summer.
I was just thinking about the difference, how strong Atletico started the market and the expectation that's set for the fans, and how weak and discouraging Atletico is ending the market. And I think it's going to have I don't know your personal take on Raspadori, and maybe that's we have an expert coming in to have a chat with you about that. All of these names that are coming out now, they're mostly underwhelming. Nico Gonzalez, the possibility of Vlahovic being an option, even if it's in exchange for Molina, and you're trying to search for a certain balance in your roster and having two players per position. I think it's still a little bit discouraging the way that Atletico has finished a market that they started stronger than any other side. I think it's been very, very comforting to see Atlético de Madrid not run into any financial fair play issues, have all of the players set to compete in time and not have any registration problems. I think that's been very encouraging from the institution side. But from the fan side, I think that there's a little bit of disappointment with how the transfer market has ended for Atlético Madrid.
Yeah, I can see that. Although Nico Gonzalez was very good at Fiorentina 2 seasons ago, he wasn't good at Juventus last year, but no one at Juventus was good last year. That club has been a dumpster fire ever since they signed Cristiano Ronaldo.
A good friend of mine has a name for that. In when you have big sales in shops in Spain, they call them outlet sales. So he says that a correct name for this end of market Atlético de Madrid would be Atlético de Madrid. It's like an outlet.
Fran Guillen said that.
Yeah, they're going for the cheaper, low cost versions of their ideal player for some positions, and that's the feeling that many started to have when Almada joined the squad. And even though I think it's just a lack of knowledge of the player himself, the same feeling that I get with Raspadori, that like fans are being in general unfair, and especially, I wouldn't say fans, I would say the Twitter noise is being unfair to Raspadori. And we could be in a similar case to Nico Gonzalez. You can see it as a depreciated player, or you could see it as a market opportunity. Maybe players that haven't been fits in certain teams are suddenly perfect fits for Atlético Madrid. So
it's happened before.
Turning those careers around are part of those bets. Maybe you can bring a combination of younger players that have everything still to prove and seem to be targeting a top tier performance. And you also have those players that have been relevant in the past and are looking for a way of rekindling their careers.
On the other hand, just sign the ideal player. Just I'm annoyed that we didn't sign Cuti Romero. I am quite annoyed. But I understand why.
Lookman, there's so many players that seem to be have been there on the Hincapié. There's so many players that seem
even Vega.
Good fit. Yeah, Vega, and they and I don't have a problem if they choose sides that are as relevant as Atlético Madrid. I do have a problem when there are teams that are supposed to be below Atlético Madrid's level that manages to sign those players. But at the end of the day, it's an accumulation of many operations, and I think that Atlético de Madrid is starting to run short of cash, despite some of that information at the beginning of the market. I think that David Medina gave that number that will be haunting him for the next few seasons of 200 million euros net cash spending.
Net spend. He had to say
Yeah,
net
which
spend.
is very far away from the 50% of that figure, which is around where Atlético Madrid are. And right now, Atlético Madrid are in a point of balance where the pieces that don't seem to fit for different reasons, I think that Atlético de Madrid can only think of 3 or 4 players that they would be willing to move at this point of the market. 2 are obvious, and 2 are due to their situation within the team. I don't know if you agree with these 4 names. I would say that Molina and Gallagher are the obvious fits because they need to play much more than they're going to play for Atlético Madrid if they want to have a shot at making it to the World Cup. And the other 2 are Sarloz and José Jiménez. One due to not accepting their position in the squad, and the other one due to a lack of availability.
I think I mostly agree with you. Molina, yes. Molina is a clear sale. I really still can't imagine that he's going to stay this season. I know he's about to become a father. Javi Gomara said that today in Mundo Deportivo that
and his wife doesn't want to move.
Yeah. Which, hey, I get it. Football is just a job at the end of the day. But
we have a head up in there.
But at the end of the day, Molina does need to start and Molina does need to play. The reason why he is considered important for Simeone is because I think the club has told him they're not bringing in another defender. And with Pubil shifting to center back, that gives you, ideally with Jimenez healthy, 5 center backs. And you do need another right back to compete with Llorente, unless you're going to convert Giuliano to that position and sign a winger like Nico Gonzalez, which I guess that's another topic of discussion. I see Molina as a pretty clear and obvious sale, especially if there is a deal worked out with Juventus where Nico Gonzalez comes one way, Molina goes the other. I would like to keep Gallagher in the squad, man. I like Gallagher. I think he's a good player, but his best role does not exist here.
Can you see a situation where can you see a situation? I mean, my point of view, and I have a very similar feeling than you do about how much I like the player, or rather a combination of the player and the person. Yeah. More the person than the player, maybe, because I haven't seen that much of the player. I mean, the other day, I have no recollection whatsoever of having seen him touch a single ball during the first half that he played. I mean,
he didn't. The second half was when he recovered. He recovered that ball that started the counterattack for the first goal against Newcastle.
Yeah, he was absolutely gone for 45 minutes. Reminded me very much to Saul at a certain point. It's like he doesn't have a space in the squad where he can first be useful to the squad.
Yes.
And second, feel important. I think it's very important for these players to feel important because they are relevant players. I mean, Gallagher is a coveted player that I'm sure that many sides in Premier League would be willing to sign.
Jimenez is someone, and I'm saying this as someone who is a long-standing Jose Ma fan.
Exactly.
But it's time. It's very much time. The contract renewal in 2023 to sign him till 2028 is one of the worst decisions the club has made this decade. Atletico should have sold him years ago. His injury issues have been a problem for a very long time, Ricky. Mm-hmm. And Jimenez lost the titularidad, the starting role, that prominence last season. Didn't play very well in the biggest games against Madrid and Barcelona when Simeone thought that was the number one reason why Atletico faltered on the biggest stages is because of a lack of defensive forcefulness. Not so much attacking. They believe in Alvarez. They believe he's going to be the number 9 and a damn good one. And I agree with them. The problem is the vulnerability in defense. Jimenez was a part of that. And I don't think that's unfair to say. I think he's a very clear sale, but very difficult to get him out. He has 3 years left on his contract, and it's a World Cup year. I don't think he wants to move. Who was the other one? Sirlot? Yeah, at this point in the window, I would keep him. I like him as an option off the bench, but as you said, it's a difficult role for him to accept.
You feel that all of these names floating in the striker position have to do with something happening behind the scenes, like a certain...
Knowing Atletico is probably not a coincidence. Yeah. There are very few things in this club that are a coincidence.
What about if you had the opportunity to, let's say that you have a limited amount of cash, you're appointed head of signings for Atlético Madrid for one day only. Who would be that last player that would be like the cherry on the top Would you go for Takefusa Kubo? Would you go for a central defender? Would you try to bring Kang Lee? What would be your choice if you could sign one single player?
Oh,
I think that Kubo would be a perfect fit.
Kubo's good. I think he had a difficult season at La Real last year. La Real were not very good last year, and I don't anticipate they're going to be much better this year. The release clause is high, though, and he's non-EU. Very difficult operation, I think. But he's a good player. I think that would be good competition for Julián. He has the dribbling that we don't have.
Another reason for Molina to not leave Spain is that his Spanish passport will be due at the end of the season if he stays around for another season.
I think
Spain
in January he becomes an EU citizen.
Yeah, he can apply for the citizenship. So I don't know. I don't know who I would sign. Probably Kubo would be very high on that wish list. But again, it's a matter of what makes sense. What can you bring? I'm worried about the defense, especially because of the Jimenez situation. Because I can see Pubil right now playing 30 games as a central defender.
Oh yeah.
Things up.
I think this is my first bold prediction. By match day 7, Marc Pubil will be the fixed starter in central defense for Atlético Madrid next to David Hansko.
Oh wow,
I am really skeptical. I like Lenormand. I am skeptical that we're going to see the level he displayed at Real Sociedad. He's in preseason. He did not look confident. There's still this hesitation in duels. The lack of foot speed. It reminds me of Stefan Savic.
How handsy he gets in the box and how
handsy, frantic, manic. You need calm, and when you're box defending, you need to be calm and composed. And Lenormand is just not that. It's just not that. And Simeone, I think, is already starting to trust Pubil. It was a very quick move to central defense in Segovia in preseason. I think by match day 7, Pubil is going to be starting.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to take long.
My bold prediction. I'm going to say that Almada is going to be one of the most important players in La Liga.
Good one. To your point earlier,
I
hope
I don't get that word wrong.
Same. Just he's got a lot of quality. I liked his preseason, especially the defensive contribution, the ball recovery, the intercepting. Love it. It looks like he's going to start in Cornellà. Simeone has been trying him in this kind of inverted role off the left wing, but the flexibility to move into like a 3-4-2-1 kind of formation. All these formations have Alvarez at the tip. How many goals do you think Alvarez can score this year?
Oh, I don't know.
If this all works out as, like, we often bemoan Atleti not having a plan. They do have a plan this summer. Put all these creative dudes behind Alvarez and just see how many goals he scores. Let's find out.
All competitions, you mean?
Yeah. Okay,
25.
in La Liga, 25.
Yeah.
So less than last year.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that he scored so many. Beyond, I think that we're going to need more contribution from other players. I'm not very sure if there's going to be a player at Atlético Madrid that's going to surpass 25 goals. But if you get 2 or 3 scoring 22, 25, 23, so it depends on how many players you manage to get into the mix of scoring. And I think that Atlético Madrid has many more options this year to be relevant on the scoring side and not have to be so reliant on Julián. I would love Julián to go over 25. I don't know what your bet would be. Do you think he's on the rise?
I'm going to go with 35.
35?
35 on all comps.
Wow, we have to remember to come back to this, to circle back to this.
Yeah, man, in 8 months, this could be used as a bludgeon against me, but that's my prediction.
Or me. It could be
it could go either way.
I could be the coward here. I could look at the guy. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Interesting.
Speaking of Julián, and then we're going to get to my talk with Joseph Fischetti. Were you surprised at all that he was left off the Ballon d'Or list? I wasn't. I'm used to Atletico being flagrantly disrespected. What about you?
Yeah, that's almost an expected snub. I have no expectation of Oblak ever being rewarded for his outstanding, incredible goalkeeping for another season. For the same reason that Simeone never opts to these best coach awards, not even when he reaches Champions League finals or walks away with a win in the Super Cup for against Real Madrid in Tallinn. Never opting to those big awards, big name awards. I think it's part of the tradition of Atletico Madrid getting snubbed.
It's part of the mystique of supporting this club. Joining me now is Joseph Fischetti. He is the producer and host of the Forza Napoli podcast, and he's joining me in this special segment to talk about Giacomo Raspadori, who has just signed for Atletico on a 5-year contract. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. Napoli are Serie A champions currently, so we're still riding the wave. It's still not something we're used to yet. We won the league 2 seasons ago, but before that, we hadn't won in 33 years. So we're riding high right now.
2 in 3 years, man, for a club that isn't that used to Scudetto glory. It's got to feel a bit surreal.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, clubs generally from the South tend not to win. I mean, everybody knows the big three, Milan, Juve, Inter. So it is a nice change, especially for us, obviously.
Well, someone who I think it's fair to say this was pretty important to Napoli's 2 recent title wins under 2 different coaches is Jack Raspadori, who has just signed for Atletico, a transfer fee of $22 million. Paid out over 3 installments and another $4 million in bonuses. Raspadori is a bit of a polarizing player in discussions and discourse I've seen online. But who is this player really, Joe? How good is he?
He's a fantastic player. I think people who are looking up stats are going to be misled because they're going to see the production not that high. They're probably going to see the appearances not that high. But really, that's because Raspadori never really fit in Napoli's system. Napoli have historically played a 4-3-3. Under Antonio Conte last season, they were kind of forced to change system a little bit at the end, and that's actually when Raspadori shone. But he is probably best used as a second striker or as a number 10, where he can play off of the main striker. And so that's where I actually think he might surprise some of the skeptics because he is a quality player. He's, despite not featuring regularly for Napoli, and again, that's just because he just never really fit. We paid 35 million euros to buy him from Sassuolo. That's, again, for a club like Napoli, that is a pretty significant transfer fee to pay. And that's because the quality is there. He just never really fit in Napoli's system. But I think he'll fit a lot better in Atleti's system.
So you mentioned the role that he best thrives in is that second striker off of a main number 9. Lucky for him, he's going to be playing behind Julián Alvarez this year, who is a pretty extraordinary forward and is set to log huge minutes, I think, as a lone forward and a lone advanced forward. What I've seen and heard about Raspadori, I've watched some clips. I watched a little bit of Napoli last year. I have a soft spot for Conte teams. I just like the way that he's able to grind out titles. And especially after you guys sold Kvaratskhelia, just the way you all found a way to win the league anyway was pretty cool, pretty inspiring. There seems to be a similarity to a player Atletico recently let go in Angel Correa, one of the most iconic figures in our club's history, made close to 500 appearances, a lot of them off the bench. And I'm seeing and reading and looking at stuff about Raspadori, and he seems a bit like an Angel Correa analog, specifically in how he's able to affect matches very late on in those late contexts. Talk to me about some specific late match turnarounds that he helped lead for Napoli over the past 3 years and what those moments were like, how they came about.
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, one thing I would say is I'll be interested to see how much he's used. Like, obviously, you know, a new player with a new club. I mean, it seems like he's fluent in Spanish, which I didn't even know until I saw some of the videos come out, which is great. I mean, that obviously is a big help. And Spanish is quite similar to Italian. But I would have assumed that a big part of this decision was based on an expectation of playing more than he did at Napoli and being used less as a substitute. Again, at the beginning of his time, I wouldn't expect him to go straight into the starting 11. But I think a large part of the reason for the move was also because the World Cup is coming. He's been a pretty regular with the Italian national team. But I think that's also because, as a lot of people know, Italy have lacked depth at the striker position. And that's opened the door for Raspadori to get call-ups. Also because he played under Spalletti when he was at Napoli and then moved to the national team. So before I even touch on kind of his abilities coming off the bench. I think his expectation will probably be that over time, I mean, again, not right away, he will be a more regular starter. Otherwise, I'm not sure why he would have left to take a similar type of role. That being said, he's fantastic off the bench. And this is, I would say, a bit of a rare quality for an attacking player. I mean, there are some, of course, that are good no matter how they're used or when they're used. But there are a lot of strikers who just don't do well coming off the bench. They need to kind of get going, warmed up, and play from the start and find their rhythm, so to speak. Whereas Raspadori does have the ability to come off the bench and score important goals. He is decisive. Probably the most famous goal, well, I won't even say probably, the most famous goal he scored was from the 22-23 campaign, where Napoli were running away with the league, but we hadn't quite clinched the Scudetto yet. And he scored a late winner, I think it was stoppage time, against Juventus, who is our bitter rivals. Pretty much everybody in Italy's bitter rivals.
Right.
And that was in Turin. So that photo will forever be an iconic kind of moment in Napoli's history to score that goal. It still wasn't the kind of clinching one, but it kind of felt like it was. And the Napoli fans waited at the airport for the club to come back, and it was all the players, Osimhen and Cavada, and all these guys were posting like live Instagram videos of all the celebrations. It was crazy, and it was Raspadori's goal that did it. And then there were a whole bunch of other ones. I mean, not always against big teams like Spezia, for example, but when you're competing for a title, I mean, 3 points is 3 points, whether it's against Spezia or Juventus. So he does have the ability to come off the bench and score. And it's not just about the finishing. It's also just the willingness to play a role. He is a team player. He is not going to create drama. He is a hard worker, and he'll do what the coach asks of him. Again, I think over time he'll expect to play more regularly, but he's not going to be a dramatic player. He's coming to work. He's coming to win first and foremost, whatever role that means. It requires him to be in for the team to win.
Like, this guy is not some kind of a bum. He's won the Scudetto twice. He won the European Championship with Italy. He's got quite the resume at 25 going on 26. But we spoke a little bit about the context in which he is appearing a lot off the bench, relatively limited minutes. But still, from what I've seen statistically, some pretty good production in limited minutes. A lot of chances created in only around 1,000 league minutes last year. What is he like as a player? Who does he, if anyone, who does he remind you of? What are his biggest strengths as a player?
It's hard to think of other players that he's similar to, but he's a diminutive striker. I would call him more of a 10 than a 9, to be honest. Again, the size. One of his best qualities is that he's 2-footed. He can score equally well with his right foot or his left foot, which is obviously a good quality to have. He's flexible enough that he can play on the wing if need be. I don't think that's his best position, but again, he's willing to do what's asked of him. I mentioned earlier, he's a hard worker. He will track back if that's what's required of him. He's, again, one of the things about players who are coming off the bench is obviously they have more energy than the guys that have been on from the first minute. And you see it with Jack. Like, he puts in the work when he's on the pitch, and it kind of does look like he's trying to prove always that he should be in the starting 11. But again, it's not in, like, there's no negative undertone to that. He's just a hard worker. He has great ball control. He's a good dribbler. Again, I find players with that low center of gravity tend to be better on the ball. So in my mind, like, there aren't many negatives, I could say. The biggest complaint, again, that Napoli fans had with Raspadori was just that, not so much anything against him, it was just that he just did not fit the system. We can never, again, I think he's best as a second striker, and playing in a 4-3-3, you don't have a second striker. So, and then especially when you look at, like, last season when Napoli had a midfield of Lobotka and Gisa and McTominay, there just wasn't much space for Raspadori in the midfield. What Conte Conte is very good at adapting players and getting them to fit into the system. When we had a number of injuries late in the season last year, he did kind of adapt the role where he used Raspadori more as almost like a winger, but he gave him the freedom to roam. So he often drifted into the middle of the park to create sort of numerical advantages. He was just a free roaming player. And because of his willingness to run and to work, he was quite happy to do that. And if you look at Raspadori's stats from last season, there should be a correlation there between starts and goals, because there was a period, ironically, it was a period where Napoli were struggling to win. And so again, it was kind of like we had to pick our poison, if you will, where we had to sacrifice Raspadori in a way to get back on get back to winning ways. But while he was starting, he was scoring goals. He was reliable in that sense.
The reaction I've seen, I scrolled the Napoli subreddit after this transfer was announced, and I saw a lot of people pretty upset about this. Yeah. He's become kind of a cult hero there, hasn't he?
Well,
in a way.
We lost two players that I would say they were both very important for the third Scudetto, so the 22-23 season. The other is El Cholo's son, Cholito Simeone, Giovanni, right? So and the two of them both of them scored quite a few important goals, including in the Champions League in that season. Giovanni didn't score as many goals last season. He fit Conte's system even less than Raspadori did. But both of those players departed the club within the span of about a week. Simeone went to Torino, Raspadori obviously went to Atleti. So Napoli fans were a little bit bummed out by that, because they were two kind of faces of that third Scudetto. They were not starters, but they were important players. And again, with Raspadori's contributions, those important late goals, there is a feeling like we lost something there. And then some people kind of even just look at it financially to say that we paid 35 million for him. We're selling him for 22 to 26, depending on how he does with those bonuses. I mean, I don't really view it that way, because we won 2 Scudetti during that time. So to me, it's like we won regardless. And I think I would say there's mixed emotions seeing Raspadori leave. We don't want him to leave because he was a good player for us and he was reliable. But at the same time, we're kind of happy for him that, he may get an opportunity to play more with another club and an important club. And, he's not, and also that he's not going to a rival of ours in Italy. So I think generally people are happy for him, but sad to see him leave.
It is interesting from the Atleti POV how this came about. Apparently, the negotiations started when Atletico were negotiating for Matteo Righetti of Atalanta. So now there are 2 Italians in the dressing room, I think, for the first time this century, which is going to be a unique dynamic. You mentioned Raspadori has that low center of gravity, which means he's really good at controlling the ball. Atleti, for much of this summer, have sought a profile I've been calling the dribbler, kind of ironically. Is that a role like a dribbling winger who can effectively create their own shots, someone who is relatively self-sufficient coming in from the wing? Can Raspadori fulfill that role at Atleti? Do you see that? It may not be his best position, but is that something he could feasibly do? Because it's something the team is lacking.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to play him on a wing, I'd probably play him as an inverted left winger. Even though I said earlier he's 2-footed, I think dribbling he can probably dribble, cut in on his right, and he is a quality finisher. He's not the type of dribbler that's the sort of flashy, skillful dribbler that's going to beat his man in that sense. But he's certainly capable of setting himself up for shots or creating chances for his teammates, as you mentioned earlier. The other thing that I think is really underrated about Raspadori is his IQ. He is a very intelligent player and a very intelligent person. So I think with time, obviously he's going to need some time to learn the system and learn Simeone's approach, but I think he'll pick that up pretty quickly. And so I find that is a bit of an advantage for him, because he can not just beat players with his feet, he can beat them with his brain too.
That is important. Atleti, I think, have made it a point of emphasis this summer to recruit younger players, more technically skilled players, also more intelligent players. High football IQ is really good to hear. It will be interesting, again, from the Atleti POV to see how he fits into the system, because I'm not very sure at all that he comes in and is immediately a starter. The focus for Atleti this summer has been on rejuvenating, reinvigorating the side, signing players who are going to be starters from day one. I'm not sure Raspadori is that, but it sounds like he's a player who is useful in a lot of contexts and can do a lot of different things, a lot like Angel Correa, who just left the club after 10 years of service. Joe, anything else you want to add about Raspadori?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I would say is players who previously played for Antonio Conte tend to do quite well. And I think that's largely because he is a drill sergeant and he has very, very intense training sessions. So I don't know if Simeone has a similar approach, but Raspadori will be joining the club fully fit. So he's not going to need time to get up to physical fitness. Again, he'll need to learn the system and the tactics. But players that play for Conte tend to be ready to go for the start of the season. And again, I don't expect him, to want to be a starter right away. I think he has to be realistic about what his role is going to be. And generally, if there's enough competitions, there's going to be games and minutes to go around. So that's probably a lesser concern right at the beginning. He's a great teammate. So he's not going to be dramatic. He's not going to create any problems in that sense. There are players at Atleti that he can learn from. To me, I don't, especially at that price tag. I think whoever is skeptical about this signing is really being a little bit harsh here, because I see a ton of upside and a relatively low risk.
Yeah, I'm loving what I'm hearing, man. I'm not hearing really much negative here, making me more excited about this signing and Raspadori's fit. And yeah, you talk about intensity and physical fitness. That also describes Cholo Simeone. So Raspadori, in that standpoint, is going to get similar quality of coaching at Atleti. Joseph Fischetti, my man, thank you so much for coming on to That Atleti Podcast. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you and your work, please?
Yeah, absolutely. The Forza Napoli podcast, you can find it on all your usual podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, and so on. I just launched a YouTube channel. I'm a bit of an old guy. It took me way too long to get going with YouTube, but it's up, and I'm slowly putting up content there. So yeah, look, I'm really hoping he does well, because like I said, we all love Raspadori and we wish him nothing but the best. And I think a lot of Napoli fans will be watching Atleti games this season. So I wish him and you guys nothing but the best.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
Let me give you another bold prediction. It's a painful one when we come back to this one. The disappointment of is there going to be any disappointment in your opinion?
From the new signings or just from the team in general?
I'll let you choose, or
Any
choose one of each.
disappointments? Okay. Among the new signings, I think Ruggetti probably has the biggest capacity to disappoint. I really like the player. I really like this potential fit. In preseason, I really like how they just gave him the whole run of the left flank. However, there is weakness in 1v1 defending. The best right winger in the world plays in La Liga.
I think he can get absolutely.
I can see Lamine Yamal just kind of tearing that apart.
Yeah, I don't know how he'll stand up against the real challenges.
It would probably be Ruggetti. In terms of anyone else in the team, Sirlot, I think it's going to be difficult for him to replicate the numbers from last season. Yeah. How efficient he was in limited time. I just think it's
goals. When the ketchup starts popping out.
That goal source could run a bit dry. And we saw it in the Champions League last season, how Sirlot did not look really fit for that competition. Atleti need to have a backup source of goals beyond just Julián. I really do think Julián can score a ton of goals, but they need somebody else to help. Ballon is not a natural goal scorer. Almada is not a natural goal scorer. Raspadori is a bit of an unknown quantity, but the statistics at Napoli have said that he's not going to be a volume goal scorer. Pablo Barrios, does Pablo Barrios have, I've predicted he will have 10 goal contributions in him next season. How close is Barrios going to get to that? How decisive will Barrios be? That's another key to this season.
And is he going to continue to be injury prone? I think the injuries remain that looming threat for Atlético Madrid, because it does seem that even though there is a more balanced squad design does seem certainly thin at certain positions. If you have to start to overplay Lenglet, overplay a midfield where Barrios isn't there, where Cardoso isn't there, you're going to start to run into the same problems that you ran into last season, where the team just didn't feel there and just was either delivering terribly poor performances in away games or wasn't coming away with the points in away games. Either result is something that I think that fans are going to be less patient with. I think that Atlético Madrid has to be more aggressive in the pressuring. I think that's going to be one of the trademark qualities of this new Atlético de Madrid. And the other one is the end of the hideous away performances that we've almost become used to.
Yeah, I wrote about that on Into the Calderon last night, part of my 3 burning questions column. Did you know over the last 2 seasons, Ricky, Atletico have won 16 of 38 away games?
It sounds quite about right, yeah. And that's
not acceptable anymore.
That's where you're losing your opportunity to compete for championship and for championships and to remain relevant until the very end. That's where, I mean, Atletico Madrid lost in the last season. La Liga was basically lost against sides like Getafe or Leganés, not against Real Madrid or Barcelona. If you rack up those points, you're in the mix until the very end. And that's what's so annoying about the way that Atletico Madrid seemed to underperform where they should have been able to perform. It was like if they had run out of energy from the big nights, the big lights were off, they failed to deliver.
Espanyol is one of those grounds where Atletico struggle every season.
Oh, yes.
1 win in the last 6. We have to go to Levante this season.
I didn't tell you before we continue. Did you hear about the soundbite, the Spanish report? Well, Spanish, I should say. Real Madrid reporters, disguised as Spanish reporters, were trying to get at the Mastantuono press conference. They were trying to get Argentinian journalists to say that Mastantuono was the heir of Messi, and everybody was pointing at Almada and saying, "No, the kid that just signed for Atlético Madrid, that's the real deal." And the other kid is like, "He's only 18. He's super young. Don't put this pressure on him. He might crack under the pressure." And it was like, oh my God, this is. I mean, it's just too good to be true.
This is Madridista media hysteria, which, by the way, about Mastantuono, I forgot about this. They're registering him as a Castilla player. They're giving him the number 30 shirt. In La Liga, it's only shirt numbers 1 through 25 that denote first team status, first team contract. They're giving him the number 30 and they're registering him for the B team. These people can do whatever they want.
They were dealing with Vinicius and they've
Rodrigo.
done it with Rodrigo. Yeah.
They can do whatever they want.
You get away with that.
Yeah. All right, man. I want to ask you who's going to be the best performer for Atleti this season, and then we're gonna wind down. Best performer of the new signings and of the older guard, so to speak.
I want to say Julián, but I'm leaning towards Cardoso or Almada. I think they're going to be really, really important pieces of the new Atlético Madrid. That would be great news for Julián Alvarez. The better that Almada works, better for Julián Alvarez at the end of the day. And Cardoso is that kind of player that we've been waiting for many years. And I think he's going to liberate Barrios a lot so he can really shine. I think that if things go as they should, Giuliano Simeone should lose relevance as a starting player and just become a squad player that is useful, but not a consistent starter. Not necessarily bad news for Atlético Madrid, not even for Simeone. Right. It's just that if you're elevating the level of the entire team, well, Giuliano shouldn't have had so much playtime last season if things have gone as well as you expected them from other players.
I agree with that. I guess devil's advocate, though, is that, and this is the last thing, Giuliano exploded in such a way that caught us all off. This was supposed to be the fifth forward last year. Like, oh, he's only here because of his dad. No, Giuliano can play. I don't rule out that there is another leap, a kind of leap coming for Giuliano. Now, I don't know if he's someone who can be the dribbler that Atleti have been linked with so frequently this window, but I don't rule out that there's another jump there. He's only he's 23, right? About to turn 23. It's a World
Yeah.
Cup year. He's already debuted for the national team, scored for Argentina. I don't rule out that there is a level to his game that he can reach, but it's one of those marginal calls. The Atleti have to rely on so many marginal things going their way to truly compete in La Liga, and that's one of those factors, whether they sign somebody for that wing or not, that could be a determining factor.
2 players to follow from the B team. I know that we had Sanchez a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
After the preseason has evolved, this mini preseason that we've had, I would say Fano and Taufik. I'm not very sure if Taufik is going to become a first team player and just skip the B team completely. He's a C team player. He's 17 years old. Really interesting to have that kind of a player developing on the team. No rush. Absolutely no pressure to give him a lot of playing time, but at the same time having the opportunity to see if he can make it in certain matches and try to find his way to bust the door open like Saul did so many years ago, or Koke himself did. Very interesting player to keep close tabs on. I would say those 2 players especially.
And we will be doing so. This time next week, we are going to have La Liga and an official competitive match for Atlético de Madrid to talk about. But until then, thank you guys so much for listening. I found out today, Ricky, that this YouTube channel has surpassed 250 subscribers.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone for subscribing, for liking, for
And
commenting.
we're consistently going over 350 views. So what's
That's
up
right.
with those other 100 guys? Come on, press the subscribe button. Like and subscribe. Not only like.
So thank you to the listeners, the viewers. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you to Joseph Fischetti for his insight and expert analysis on Jack Raspadori that you heard earlier. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Twitter, Into the Calderon, TikTok, Instagram, That Atleti Podcast. Thank you guys again. We'll be back next week to talk about Espanyol and Atleti, and hopefully an Atleti victory in Cornea. Until then, adios.